So, day 3 of Warhammer 40K spoiler season continues on, and if you haven't seen my most recent episode on Lucius the Eternal, make sure you check that one out because my goodness is a unique commander that I think many players are going to be excited about. But don't leave just yet because you've got to stay tuned for this episode to find out why I said, "Oh no!" right when I saw this card. But first, blame Eddie in the comments below because Eddie's been helping out during spoiler season. Eddie does a great job, but if I make any mistakes, remember, it's always Eddie's fault. Never mind. Anyways, let's jump into it. So, Tyranid Prime is a 0/4 that costs 1 green blue, and it has Evolve, and it has Synapse creature. Other creatures you control have Evolve. Now, when I read through this card, I was very excited, actually, until I noticed one thing that I probably should have noticed right away, but I didn't. It's missing a certain piece of text on it. You know, the part where it probably should have been legendary. Now, I'm not saying it should have been legendary because, you know, Tyranid Prime is some kind of a legendary creature. I've got no idea. Okay, again, I don't play Warhammer 40K, so, yeah, I mean, there's probably more than one Tyranid Prime if it's not legendary, but still, I mean, this kind of a card I have been waiting for such a long time, and it really is a legendary effect. I mean, okay, at least to me, I have been waiting for, I mean, and I know Evolve isn't everyone's favorite mechanic, but I think that there's a lot of potential with it, and unfortunately, again, for one reason or another, this is put on a creature that is not legendary. Now, I will say, obviously, you know, there are plenty of playgroups out there that are completely fine with players playing with, you know, non-legendary creatures. I mean, for a while, I had an Ink Trader Nebulum deck because my playgroup was fine with me playing with that. So, even though it is not a legendary creature, that doesn't mean that you can't necessarily build a deck around it. Just ask your playgroup first. Now, that being said, obviously, it would be a widely more accepted, you know, commander to build around if it was legendary, which, again, Wizards. Why? Why? I mean, I'm sure the answer is something along the lines of, well, we only want to have a certain number of legendary creatures in every single deck, so that has to match, and because of that, we had to make some certain decisions, and la 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 la. Don't care. This should have been legendary. Okay, off my soapbox now. Now, all this doesn't mean that, you know, we won't get a legendary version of this in some way in the future. We might get a, you know, legendary Evolve commander at some point. Maybe when we go back to, I believe, did Evolve start in Ravnica at some point? I think, like, you know, whatever, Return to Ravnica maybe, or something like that. Regardless, maybe when we go back to Ravnica, yeah, Symbic's gonna be like, Evolve commander, cool, here you go. But at this point, again, there is not an Evolve commander. Again, you can use this one, though, if your playgroup's okay with it. And again, I would like to show you what kinds of cool things that you can do with a commander like this one. So yeah, if your playgroup's okay with it, feel free to build around it. And yeah, there is a link in the description below for the cards I'm going to be talking about on this episode, so check that out. And yeah, with all that said, let's jump into the cards. First up, I mean, come on, Shark to Crab. Yes, I mean, a 4/4 Shark Octopus Crab, because that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, any kind of a deck that you can throw Shark to Crab in that's going to be effective is a good one, because you're like, Shark to Crab. It's just fun to say, fun to play. Anyways, it has Adapt, which is a garbage mechanic for the most part, but it says whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on Shark to Crab, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap target controllers. Next, untap step. So again, the adapt mechanic is really not all that great, and I don't think I'm going on a limb to say that, but yeah, I mean, it's very expensive to actually just pay that adapt cost. So instead, yeah, I mean, again, if Tyranid Prime was your commander, it's gonna have Evolve then instead. So whenever a creature, you know, comes into play that has greater power or toughness than this creature, get a +1 counter on this creature. And I'm just realizing now I probably didn't say that actually when I introduced the actual card, Tyranid Prime, and I probably should have specified what Evolve is, but anyways. So yeah, basically get bigger creatures in play. This gets counters, and then every single time it does, you can tap down your opponent's creatures to, protect yourself from their creatures swinging at you, and also to get your creatures through. And speaking of getting creatures through, well, we can definitely make an army with Herd Baloth. Whenever one or more +1 counters are put on Herd Baloth, you may create a 4/4 green beast creature token. So again, this having evolved can be fantastic. Every single time we grow this creature, we get a creature token. And of course, that creature token, while it's not going to be bigger than Herd Baloth, so it can't pump that, it can, evolve our other creatures that are going to be smaller than it. Because, of course, keep in mind, evolve does not specify, non-token. It doesn't say, hey, when a non-token creature comes into play, just any creature coming into play under our control can trigger evolve. And speaking of evolve, well, there's Scurry Oak, which is a 1/2 that already has evolve. And rules lawyers out there, judges, please let me know in the comments below, but I'm pretty sure this is accurate. If I have evolve, from, my, again, quote-unquote commander Tyranid Prime, that's also given to Scurry Oak, I believe you'd have 2 instances of evolve then, which would be fantastic, so this could trigger twice, essentially. And whenever one or more +1 counters are put on Scurry Oak, you may create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token, so yeah, you can have that trigger twice, essentially, if that is the case. But yeah, fill the board with squirrels, which of course also have evolve, so they can get much more massive, throughout the game. So yeah, I mean, again, giving your creatures evolve has a lot of potential, even just with these kinds of creatures. And some other great examples come with cards like Benthic Biomancer and Fathom Mage. Benthic Biomancer says, whenever one or more +1 counters are put on Benthic Biomancer, draw a card, then discard a card. So, again, there's that really garbage, adaptability. And sorry, for any adapt fans out there, I'm not trying to bash one of your favorite abilities, but it could have been done better, let's just say that. Anyways, yeah, if we have evolve with this, then, this small 1/1, whenever any other creature comes into play that's bigger than it, we are going to be getting counters on this, and we just keep looting again and again and again. I mean, the more and more creatures that come into play that are bigger, the larger this gets, the larger the threat it is, and the more card selection this can provide us throughout the game. And we can also just get straight up card advantage, though, with Fathom Mage, which is a fantastic 1/1 that already has evolve, and again, I believe that we would just get a second instance of evolve, which is great, because whenever a counter is put on Fathom Mage, you may draw a card. So essentially, get a bigger creature into play, evolve twice, draw 2 cards. Yeah, that can be fantastic. And again, rules lawyers out there, please help me out, but I believe that's how that would work. So again, these types of creatures that, trigger when they get counters on them can be fantastic additions to, a deck built around this kind of a concept. But obviously, we can have other kinds of creatures that care about counters in different ways, like, Toothy or Wild Beastmaster or even Sage of Hours. Toothy says, whenever you draw a card, put a +1 counter on Toothy Imaginary Friend, and when it leaves the battlefield, draw a card for each +1 counter on it. So Toothy can grow throughout the game based on the number of cards that we are drawing, but of course, on top of that, if it also has evolve, it can grow even quicker whenever we get big creatures into play, or I should say bigger creatures. But yeah, when Toothy finally leaves the battlefield, whether, that's it, getting taken out, in combat or a board wipe, or, if we bounce it or blink it, we get to draw a ton of cards thanks to it. Moving on, Wild Beastmaster doesn't specifically care about counters, but it does care about power. Whenever it attacks, each other creature control gets +X/+X until a turn where X is Wild Beastmaster's power. So again, by giving this evolve, we can grow it throughout the game by just getting bigger and bigger creatures into play. I mean, this starts off as a 1/1, so yeah, this has a lot of potential to grow, and when it attacks, it can make our army absolutely massive and deadly. Speaking of deadly, though, Sage of Hours has Heroic. Whenever you cast a spell, it targets it, put a +1 counter on it, so that's one way to get counters on it, but Evolve can probably help even more. Remove all +1 counters from Sage of Hours. For each 5 counters with this way, take an extra turn after this one. So by growing Sage of Hours and getting more and more counters on it, we can eventually just start getting extra turns with it, and of course, by removing all counters from it, that's not a bad thing, because again, we can then just basically reset it back down to a 1/1 and start getting even more counters on it again thanks to Evolve. Which then, of course, leads to more extra turns, and yeah, I mean, I think a card like this definitely has a lot of potential in a kind of deck built around this strategy. Next up, now let's talk about some ways to actually trigger Evolve with, cards like Paradox Zone and even Melodric Summonings. Paradox Zone might just be one of the best ways to do this. It says when it enters the battlefield, it enters with a growth counter on it. At the beginning of your end step, double the number of growth counters on Paradox Zone, then create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. Put X1 counters on it, where X the number of growth counters on Paradox Zone. Essentially, every single end step you keep getting a creature that is twice as big as the previous one that you got. So you start off, with a 2/2, then a 4/4, then an 8/8, etc., etc., etc. So this can easily trigger evolve on your creatures and just keep triggering basically every single end step. And also, I probably should have mentioned this earlier. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to counters, like, these growth counters or +1/+1 counters, that works very well with, proliferate effects, which of course you can utilize in these colors in fantastic ways. Next up, though, how about another kind of a token creator, though, with Metallurgic Summonings? Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create an XX colors construct artifact creature token where X that spell's mana value. So now even your instants and sorceries can help you make an army, and again, no matter how small those instants and sorceries might be, they can make a difference just getting you tokens that again have evolve, or again, if you are casting bigger instants and sorceries, you can make bigger tokens which can trigger evolve on your other creatures. So yeah, cards like these definitely have a lot of potential for an evolve strategy. Or you can just get some massive creatures. I mean, Altered Ego is a great clone. It's a 0/0 that costs X2, green, blue. It can't be countered. Instead, you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it enters with X additional +1 counters on it. I mean, at the very least, if you just want to say, okay, my biggest creature in play is, this one out there, I'll just pay 1 into that X, get an additional counter on this, and ensure that I trigger evolve essentially on all of my creatures. Or, you can just play a 10/10 like Primeval Protector, which is probably going to trigger evolve on, basically all your creatures. Or, most of them at least. Anyways, costs 10 and a green, but you're never going to pay that much for it. It's going to cost 1 less cast for each creature your opponents control, so this can cost as little as just a single mana. When it enters the battlefield, you get a +1 counter on each other creature you control. So this can make your creatures even bigger. Again, essentially, if this triggers evolve on your creatures, that's 2 counters on every single one of them. So yeah, massive creatures like these can definitely help out and can really help add up some value throughout the game. And speaking of value, my goodness, persist creatures can be really good with an evolved kind of strategy. Glenelendra Archmage, one of them, a 2/2 with flyer, pay a blue, sacrifice a counter target non-creature spell, and it has persist, which means when it dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return to the battlefield under its control with a -1/-1 counter on it. So here's the thing, again, with this having evolve, and again, after it comes back into play with a -1/-1 counter on it, it's what, a 1/1? Yeah, you basically get any other creature in play that's just slightly bigger than that, you get a +1 counter on this, and that just negates the -1/-1 counter. So yeah, you can just keep persisting this again and again and again throughout the game for a ton of value. Or how about a bigger persist creature like Woodfall Prime? It's a 6/6 with trample. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-creature permanent, and it's got, again, persist. So again, if you can keep getting +1/+1 counters on this to negate those -1/-1 counters, you can keep taking out a ton of things throughout the game. And also, again, this can actually trigger, evolve on other creatures by, coming into play as a 6/6, back into play, as a 5/5 that persists, etc., etc. And kind of with all of this, with River Kelpie, you can also just generate a ton of card advantage because whenever it or other permanent enters the battlefield from a graveyard, draw a card. And whenever a player casts a spell from a graveyard, draw a card too. So if you've got, flashback or kickstart cards, there's also some incidental value there. But yeah, also, just a creature that you can keep getting back because of that persist. So definitely another thing to keep in mind. Also, you're gonna want to keep in mind cards like Rishkar, Pima Renegade, and Herald of Secret Streams. Rishkar has, when it enters the battlefield, put a +1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures, and each creature you control with a counter on it has tap, add green. So again, with your creatures having evolve, well, you can get counters on basically all of them pretty easily, and then you've got a lot of essentially, mana dorks. This turns your entire army into mana dorks that can tap for a ton of mana for you to just skyrocket you well ahead of your opponents. And speaking of getting ahead of your opponents, well, you can also get ahead of their life totals with Herald of Secret Streams. Creatures you control with +1 counters on them can't be blocked. Again, all you need to do is essentially evolve all your creatures once. That's all you really need to do to get counters on them, and then all of your creatures are unblockable. So good luck to your opponents, especially again when you've got ways to make massive armies like I talked about earlier with cards like Herd Balov. So yeah, good luck to your opponents. You're going to be taking them out quite quickly with something like this. But again, like I mentioned, at this point, this is not a legendary creature, so if you are looking to build around it, please, please, please ask your playgroup first. But yeah, I'm sure many playgroups out there are going to be completely fine with that. That being said, let's talk about Tyranid Prime in the 99 of other decks because, yeah, I mean, at this point, this could be a great card in a deck like Falco Spara Pact Weaver. A 3/3 flying triple bird demon that says, when it enters the battlefield, enters with a shield counter on it, you may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast spells from the top of your library by removing a counter from a creature you control, in addition to paying its other cost. So, giving your creatures evolve in this kind of a deck can be fantastic. That can be a great way to keep getting more and more counters on them, and of course, then you can utilize those counters, which does make them smaller, which is fine, but utilize those counters to cast things off the top of your library. And by making those creatures smaller again, it makes them easier to evolve again to get more counters on them, so you can just keep utilizing this. It can just be a counter engine for you in a way. And speaking of counter engines, I mean, yeah, okay, +1/+1 counters builds like, attracts the Praetor's Voice. That can definitely be a place for it as well. A 4/4 with Flying Vigilance, Death Touch, and Lifelink. So yeah, giving this evolve as well can be great to make this more massive. And of course, on top of that, beginning of your end step, Proliferate. So you just need to get one counter on your creatures. One of those +1 counters, which is very easy to do again when all your creatures have evolve. And when that happens, well, you can just start proliferating those counters and getting more and more counters on them throughout the game thanks to this and, all of your other proliferate effects that go into an Atraxa +1/+1 counters build. But now, as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Tyranid Prime. Yeah, again, when I first saw this card and read through it, I was very excited. It's like, oh my goodness, finally an Evolve Commander. Okay, one problem, it's not legendary. Why, Wizards, why? And then Wizard says, well, you can only have so many legendary creatures in a precon, blah, 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 blah. I don't care. Okay, back off the soapbox. Anyways, yeah, ask your playgroup. I'm planning on asking my playgroup if this is completely fun to play with. So definitely ask your playgroup. And if you are excited about this, like I am, yeah, check out that card list link in the description below. Please, though, again, ask your playgroup first. You don't want to, buy a deck and then your playgroup's like, no, we're not okay with that. And also, yeah, this can be a great card in plenty of decks out there, especially, again, decks that really care about getting counters on their creatures, so make sure you keep that in mind, too. But, of course, make sure you're staying tuned to this channel for even more exciting quick takes and spoilers coming up. And with that, this show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.